It's like I remember one time there was a preacher that I appreciated, and he said he always gave us a warning as a young kid. He said, when we ask for an increase of faith, what we often don't realize is the trials that we go through is how our faith is increased. It's not like
Hmm.
God just gives you a sack of faith and says like, hey, here you go, Andrew and Mark, your faith has been increased. We have to go through experiences in order to gain that faith. And I just remember that as a young man, him telling the story, and he meant it really good. It's not that we shouldn't ask for faith, but be very careful that if we're asking God to try us, which I think is a noble, wonderful thing to do if you're spiritually have good footing and you are prepared for that. But sometimes we ask to be tried, and then we get upset when we're tried. And it's like, I think what he was trying to do is just bring awareness that when we pray for things, like, be willing for God's answer, because you literally just prayed for faith, but maybe you weren't willing for the experience that would lead to that faith.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Builder's Bible. I'm joined by Mark Williams, who is founder of Mark Williams Custom Homes. I'm excited to dive into it with him today. We just found out a fellow believer and uses the scriptures to inform his business, which is always cool. So, Mark, tell me a story, man. How'd you get into the industry? How'd you wind up where we are today?
Well, my mom and dad were builders and designers. I knew it was the one thing I did not want to do, because you don't want to do what your parents do. And so I had a lawn mowing business in high school and college. Used to spend my summers reading Louis L'Amour's or listening to the audio book tapes on mowing yards. Sold my business when I was in college, and my mom and dad retired in 2001 or two, something like that. I was 21, and I thought, what would be fun? I should be a builder. And I forgot about all the reasons I didn't want to be a builder. And then started in 2004 or 5, built a house. Got rid of my suit, got rid of my car, bought a Chevy Silverado, got my building license, and that was 21 years ago.
Man, that's that. Okay, so how old were you when you started the business?
24.
Dang. So, and from scratch, like you just
Yep.
started. How did you get
So
your first clients?
yeah,
What initially happened?
well, it's funny because I'm third generation, but it's all broken. So my grandpa was a builder. He owned service
Yeah.
stations back in the 50s and 60s. But then my dad, who started, did not, there was no business to take over because my grandpa was a terrible business owner. And my dad went to flight school to be a airline pilot, but he was
Yeah.
too young to be drafted into Vietnam. But by the time he graduated flight school out of Nebraska, all the Vietnam vets came back. And are you going to hire a fresh out of pilot school pilot, or someone who's like, flew 500 combat missions over Vietnam to be your airline pilot? So he couldn't get a
Hmm.
job. So he borrowed some money from his uncle to be and built a house, and just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And he actually ended up flying his whole life as well, but he was a builder by trade. And then my mom, interior designer. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes when you say you're not going to do something, that's exactly what you do. It's kind of like it's kind of to go scriptural. It's kind of like if you ever bring your ideas to God and say, I'm not going to do that, it's most
Yep.
likely going to be exactly what God asks you to do. Kind of
That's
like,
really funny. Yeah. That's so true.
you'd be like, it's like I remember one time there was a preacher that I appreciated, and he said, he always gave us a warning as a young kid. He said, when we ask for an increase of faith, what we often don't realize is the trials that we go through is how our faith is increased. It's not like
Hmm.
God just gives you a sack of faith and says like, hey, here you go, Andrew and Mark, your faith has been increased. We have to go through experiences in order to gain that faith. And I just remember that as a young man, him telling the story, and he meant it really good. It's not that we shouldn't ask for faith, but be very careful that if we're asking God to try us, which I think is a noble, wonderful thing to do if you're spiritually have good footing and you are prepared for that. But sometimes we ask to be tried, and then we get upset when we're tried. And it's like, I think what he was trying to do is just bring awareness that when we pray for things, like, be willing for God's answer, because you literally just prayed for faith, but maybe you weren't willing for the experience that would lead to that faith. That always resonated in my mind when I was always very careful when I asked for certain things, just because of that
Hmm.
message.
Hmm. That's a good word. Okay, real quick for the sake of the audience, what just size or scope of your company? Like, either how many buildings are you, building, or how many homes are you
So
building per year?
today, yeah. So when I started, I was building like $600,000 homes back in the early 2000s. Now, after 21 years, we've always done really good work. We've always been kind of a bespoke custom builder, anywhere from 5 to 10 homes a year. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we do really high end homes, so we probably do between $2 to $8 million homes in terms of the price point, and then we do maybe 3 to 4 homes a year. I have a small team of 5 people. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I have another podcast called The Curious Builder. I started that 3 years ago, but that's actually takes about 40% of my time. So not only do I have the Curious Builder podcast, but I also have these Curious collectives. So I have several around the country. We're like a mastermind group for builders. So we've got like Brad Levitt leads one of mine down in Arizona. He's a big builder down in the Southwest. We've got one in Austin, Texas. We're launching one in Charleston, Atlanta, Seattle, LA. So basically, I find that I just want to bring people together so that they can have open, honest conversations about running their business, because no one could really, even if you went to school for business, it doesn't help you. I mean, I went to school for business and I can't remember a single thing I learned. The school of hard knocks, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, and you learn all of it on our own. And it's kind of the thing I love about your podcast and mine, and what I try to do is like just break down the walls and just talk. And both as predominantly men in the business, which we need more women, number one, but number two, how about we just talk about our feelings, and how about we just talk about our struggles? Because if you don't, everyone has to learn it. It'd be like going through life and never having the Bible. Like, the Bible is a
Yep.
super helpful tool. Now, God, through his spirit, can obviously work with all of us well before the Bible ever existed. But like, I think we all can have to say, like, man, am I thankful I have a Bible, because you can read about it and apply it to your life. And well,
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't love, I guess I do. I usually would say I don't like mixing, uh, not the spiritual things. I believe strongly in that, but it's like, I don't myself try to mix business and my beliefs, but because my beliefs are who I am, I can't not do it. So I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but like yeah, anyway, I don't need to go on a soapbox with that. But I guess my point being is like, I think relating it back to business, just us talking about our lives, what we struggle with,
Yep.
marriage, our jobs, our kids, how do we balance it all? I mean, it's pretty much my favorite topic, because I love talking to people, yourself or anyone I talk to, strangers, anybody, because I'm a very open person. I'm about the least private person I've ever met. And my mirror is like, please, be more private. And
Mhm.
anyway, it's just, I find we have so much to learn from each other, and we don't have to
Yes.
keep on reinventing the wheel, even though when we've learned lessons, we seem to do it over and over and over again. It seems to be the human condition. But that being said, is like, let's just talk about it, because if someone else's lesson can help me, then my lessons can help someone else. And maybe I'll let you give a space to answer that, because I have a really good story along that line that might be interesting to your audience.
Well, I just think vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools we have, right? It breaks down walls. And what I love about sharing my story with people is like, yeah, I had a mental health breakdown, literally was suicidal. Anytime I share that with a business owner, like, oh, dude, tell me about it. I was addicted to cocaine, or my wife was about to leave me, or dude, I had one guy who was like, yeah, I pulled the trigger and the gun didn't click. I was like,
Wow.
oh man. Yeah. And those stories though are so powerful, because I believe that if you own a business, even if you don't know God, you're doing God's work, putting food on the table, providing for people. It's one of the most stressful and also most, I mean, it's like having a baby, right? It's like, it's a mix of emotions. It's a roller coaster. But I believe, uh, wholeheartedly that I'm in ministry. Like, one of the best places to do ministry, quote unquote, is in the marketplace. Um, and so vulnerability, I think, is one of the most powerful tools. It builds instant rapport, instant trust. And there's something about sharing that with other business owners. They just get it. They just get it.
Well, and,
So,
and and think about, I was just giving a presentation to there's something called in Minnesota called WINC, Women in Construction. So there's a room of 99 women, and I was interviewing 3 owners. And one of the conversations that we had was, I've always, as a man, and this is funny because I ended up being wrong on this, which is pie in my face in front of 100 women. And so anyway, I've always said to my clients, I think the most emotional thing for a business is building. I can't think of another business that's more emotional, because it's likely the most expensive thing you'll ever do. And it's also it takes a long time and it's very emotional because if you're remodeling, you're in somebody's home, you get to know their family. And these can all be
Yep.
good things. I think sometimes we associate, probably men in particular, we think of emotions as can be a negative thing, but it's not. I mean, it can be. Emotions are just real. They're heavy and they can be they also can motivate us and give us a lot of fire. And
Yep.
so I have often told my clients that other than your marriage, and what your wife thought marriage would be and what you did, and building a home, I think those are the two most emotional, expensive things you do in your life. And so I'm speaking to
Yep.
this audience of 100 women, and I asked them if anyone disagreed, and all 99 women raised their hand and they said, "Nope, you forgot the most important one." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Having a baby."
Having a baby. Yeah.
And I was
That's
like,
great.
okay, yeah, that is okay. I get that one. That one is way more expensive. You're totally right. So
Totally.
anyway, it's baby
Totally.
first, and I had them rank it. All the women in the room rank baby first, house second, marriage third, which I thought was super. So
Yeah.
as home builders in the United States, we are in a very crosshairs of a very emotional time point in everybody's life. And so if you can't connect with people, if you can't get real with people, like again, I think this is a positive thing. It's a good thing, but I think honestly, builders and remodelers are really attuned to having to do that because our clientele, it's a very emotional thing we're doing. You're in somebody's home, creating a home space for them to have their memories and their family and their life with. And so it's a super cool thing we get to be a part of.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, let's talk about lead gen for a second. So I've talked to a lot of custom home builders. And one thing that's really surprised me is I haven't talked to a single one that's like, I have a guaranteed, repeatable way to get new clients in the door. They all get referrals, right? And that's fine. But I haven't talked to anybody that has like some sort of a funnel where it's like, hey, because I mean, what I hear is like, building a custom home. It's so bespoke. It's so custom, right? There's so much trust. But I'm really surprised, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I haven't talked to a single one where it's like, oh, I know if I put $1 into this marketing strategy, I get $5 back. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on
I don't know, right back at you. Let me know when you find the answer to that one.
that.
I believe in, I'm not a sniper. I believe in the shotgun approach. I put a lot of bullets in the air, but you don't really know where your ROI is. Um, I think, poof, I don't think there's an answer for that. And honestly, most marketing companies, honestly, whatever business you're in, there's very few direct ROIs where someone could say $1 in, $5 out. I mean, I think it's so rare. I think that's why marketing companies continue to have marketing companies, because nobody can actually, if you could actually come up with a recipe that people knew exactly, there would be a lot less marketing companies, and you get a lot more results from that one company. But I think the problem is we all try a little bit of everything, and it's really hard unless you only change one thing at a time to really understand what's working. And I'm
Hmm.
sure I have undiagnosed ADHD, so I try like 18 things at one time. I mean, I don't know which ones are working. Now I have an idea of which ones are working, but I also think you need to marry it with like what you enjoy doing, what represents your brand. The last couple of years, I've become uber focused on brand. And brand to me, big B, is when it's, you've heard the saying silent salesman, people on your team that you don't have to pay that sell for you. So your past clients, you're not paying them, but they're selling your brand. I think you're literally your brand, your logo, your company, your mission statement, your homes, your product, your people, your employees, your past clients, all of that for me is my brand, my
Mm.
reputation. It's all of it together. And so I want that to speak what I want it to speak. And so if you're really a good steward of your own brand, then your brand is out there selling for you in places you don't even know it is. Word of mouth, things
Yeah.
like that. I mean, I've got something right here on camera for if you do video clips. So this is actually a hand glazed tile. It's from Delft. It's from the Netherlands. It's a Delft. It's called Delft tile. They're hand painted. There's a lady in Duluth, Minnesota, that hand paints these. The reason I'm bringing this up is on the back I did a QR code to Misahus, my spec home that I'm doing, that I created this brand around. And so during the holidays right now, I'm handing out my gift boxes to all my past clients, the top 10 architects I want to work with and the top 10 designers I want to work with.
That's cool.
Nobody's handing a hand painted tile to them that also represents my brand. So I'm when they touch it, when they feel it, like these are all organic biophilic design things that I want people, because I think Maya Angelou said it. My wife says it all
What
the
was the word
time.
you just used? Bio what?
Biophilic. It means when something represents something in nature, but it's not. So for instance, like when you see hardy plank and you know how it has the styration, so it looks like cedar, but it's actually made out of
Yeah.
cement. We
Huh.
naturally as humans feel a draw towards natural products. They tend to be more expensive, like cedar or tongue and groove, or wood cabinetry. Like if you have MDF or plastic or LP, I'm not saying they're bad products. I'm just saying, like, as humans, we don't like those. We tend to be, if you listed like 10 products, the average person would normally go towards something that's organic or real. That's called biophilic design, from my understanding. And so
Hmm.
for me, I like my brand and the things that I do. I want to represent me as a person. Now, some people, what they build does not represent themselves personally. But I think we're not that smart at 23. I mean, I'm not that smart now at 45. I certainly wasn't very bright at 23. And so, like, the point being is, like, nobody told us don't start a company called Mark D. Williams Custom Homes. Blah. Like, that's such a long name. It's like, if you could come up with a brand early on and have an idea of what you wanted it to speak, I mean, we'd have all kinds of different kinds of companies. And so most builders and remodelers tend to name their company after themselves because no one told them differently, number one. But then number two, we tend to wear our emotions on our sleeves. We sort of we represent it. Now, the real danger with that is that if your company fails, people feel that then they're a failure, which is not true. Your company can fail and you can be successful. When I say successful, that's the wrong word. I hope people don't have so much of their own self-worth in their home or in their business that if their business fails, then they have no self-worth. And I think the
Hmm.
opposite can be true. If we have tons of self-worth, I think we can inject that into our business, vice versa. But and I'm not saying that our business doesn't help bring us confidence, but I don't know the circumstances of people that have said, like, I think you even mentioned maybe you had got to the point where you thought suicidal, and don't know all the circumstances around that. But I just was interacting with someone the other day that his business was so close to failure, that he considered taking his own life. In fact, I had a friend 2 weeks ago that did take his own life,
Hmm.
out in Utah, and I don't know all the circumstances. He wasn't super close to me, but I found out later it was because there was a bunch of financial issues, and we talked about it among our builder friend group that if people had known, his name was Ron Jensen out in Utah, if people had known how much he was struggling financially, 100, and that he was on the verge of taking his own
People
life,
would have helped
you
out.
could have
Yeah.
done a GoFundMe page, and he would have got $200 million. I mean, people care about people, but we isolate
Yeah.
ourselves. We don't share what we're going through. We don't even tell
Yeah.
our own spouses sometimes what we're going through,
Right.
much less the world. And so, anyway, I've gone all over with this question, but
Yeah.
anyway, there you go.
No, I mean, I think it's so
We went from
powerful,
we went
and
from
it.
we went from lead gen to suicide. So that was that covered a lot of topics there.
Um, Mark, what's going really well in your business now, and what's not going so well?
Good question. Um, I think, like, I mean, we're coming into a good period. The last 2 years have been a real struggle, uh, getting the right people in the right seats. My team has never been stronger. I'm super excited about my team, and the number of projects we have now. The last couple of years have been really low on cash, so cash has been super tight. The last couple of years, I've never had in 21-year career had to use a line of credit to survive, and I've had to do that, which makes me super uncomfortable. But that's been paid off now, and we've got a couple of big projects that we'll have some of our best years in 26, 27, knock on wood, because we have this, the biggest home I've ever had on our contract is an $8 million home for this client. Amazing client, delightful, architects, great. Everyone, the dream team, everyone's assembled. We're ready to go. I'm thinking, like, this is the best. 2 weeks before we're going to break ground, it's a half mile away from a football stadium. And the client went out there on a Friday night, and the lights, I mean, I could send you the photo. It looks like a 747 is landing in your backyard. And
Dang.
so it's called light spillage. I know more about stadium lights than anyone on this planet should know, other than if your profession is stadium lights. And we've interviewed schools, we've interviewed district administrators. I mean, I've talked to lighting companies all over the country. So anyway, long story short, my client has basically said, this is on hold until you solve this problem. So I'm in one hand, I've got an $8 million spec home that I'm super jazzed to go, and I'm sitting on the permit. He says, don't buy the permit because I don't want to waste money if I have to pull out. I'm thinking, and you can imagine working through a school board, how long that takes. They've got to do bonding. They have to do all this stuff. So anyway, that's my pain. Is in one hand, I'm like ready to go. Everything is great. And on the other hand, I'm like, I can't move forward because I got to solve now a football stadium situation. So anyway,
That
it's
is
just,
quite a pickle. That is, I don't know how I would try to solve for that one. So
well,
what's your best idea? Like how are you
there's
approaching it?
I mean, there's only one way to do it. You have to replace the lights. So the lights are an older technology, and the light spillage. Now we put it on the school to fix, but a school doesn't have a lot of money, and they're on a multi-year budgeting cycle. And this home is going to take 2 years to build. So the client would be fine if the school said, "Hey, in the next 2 years, we'll replace this lights." But like the district administrator told me, he's like, "I've got a library that's leaking water right now. You're the only one complaining about these lights. So I mean, I've got like 7 buttons. I can go to the public. I could get 100 people to sign a petition. I could do the whole lawyer thing, and it's just a nightmare. So I'm trying to do this with honey, not with vinegar. There's also like $8 million job is a huge job. Like, is there a part of it where like I asked the client, like, hey, you kick in 100K, I'll kick in 100K, let's just make this go away. I mean, but then it costs me 100,000. But like, are you better having something, 90% of something versus 100% of nothing? And so like all these scenarios are in my mind of like what to do. So I don't know how we'll solve it. We'll solve it one way or another, but um,
Mm.
it's just it takes time, which unfortunately time sort of obscures the clarity of where we're going, and so it makes it a little bit um my nightmare scenario is that the client just decides to go buy a house. I mean, they've already bought the land, they've already given us a down payment, so like they're in pretty deep. But
They're
I
committed.
don't you
Yeah.
just but you never know, man. This world, I feel a lot easier when when you put $200,000 of concrete in the ground, like nobody's going anywhere. So like I'll feel way
Yeah.
better when I've got a lot of concrete in the ground.
Yep. Um, let's talk about AI for a second. How are you using it, and how do you feel like it's shaping your industry?
Yeah, we use it all the time. We do a lot of blog writing, and with the podcast, I use it all the time. I mean, obviously for notes, I have someone that helps me write all the notes. So we'll do guest research. Obviously that's scrubbing it. It's pretty easy, and then I'll get 10 questions, and then I'll tweak them with my own personal flair. We probably do 5 or 6 blogs a month, but between the Curious Builder and Mark Williams Custom Home. So we're constantly writing. We use it a lot for framework. That's more from a writing standpoint and marketing. I use it a lot. Actually, there's a guy down in Arizona who just sent me this amazing 3D video rendering of like a house like exploding up out of the ground. I'm like, dang. And he's like, oh yeah, it's no problem. I can do it for you. So I'm gonna have him start doing 2 to 3. I'll give him like renderings of a home. So we'll use it a lot for social media, for marketing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also use it for my email. I use a program called Fixer. So it auto drafts
Yep.
all your emails. It's not as accurate as I'd like it, but on the easy peasy stuff, like it saves me a lot of time, and it does give me a report like, hey, you saved 14 hours this week. I'm like, really? I don't know if it's making itself seem better. I bet their analytical report was like, make myself useful, tell Mark it's more hours than he could even know to track. So um let's see, what else do we use it for? I use it with all my obviously all your virtual meetings I use, but I also use Otter. Every meeting I have in the field with my office or with my clients, I turn on my AI note taker so that it
Yep.
gives us, it's just simple. It'll be what everyone does. I've got a warning though for the audience. I've been talking about my groups. We just had AI as a topic for our roundtable last week. So I was on a call with my architect, and the client wasn't there yet. And you can probably see where this is going. The note taker was there taking notes. We're talking shop, nothing bad, but we're just like, hey, this client is difficult. We're not getting what we need to. Like, we might get fired. Like, just talking real. The client comes in to the call. His wife was here in person, but so it was at our office. And then the Mister was he's in the ER.
They got a copy of the notes.
They got a copy of the notes. So I rescued the project. They're ready to move forward. The notes automatically send to him. He opens up the notes in front of his 12-year-old daughter looking for drawings, and he hears us talking shop. Now, he sends me a text, we need to talk. In my heart, I was actually in a podcast when I got the text. And I remember just, you're conscientious. You feel terrible. And then I went back and listened to it. I didn't say anything bad. I know I'm not a bad person. So I'm like, okay, well, what did I really say? But it just wasn't a good look. And so, of course, I
Yeah.
apologized. And that actually leads me to one of my favorite verses I use all the time in business, which is, I think it's out of Proverbs, a soft answer turneth away wrath. And so, and A, I was sorry. And B, like, I've used that all the time. When I go into when I know that client is going to be really difficult, or I know there's just really charged. If you walk into the room and you apologize, number one, it has to be sincere. Like, you can't fake it. It has to be real. But I often think about it, if you leave with softness, like, you sort of take away the power, you take away the wind out of their sails, because you just come in, you say, like, I'm really sorry. I messed up. This is on me. I have no excuses. And I'm sorry I put you in this spot. Like, what are they going to say? Like, you
Yeah.
just did it. And so that's, I would say, I mean,
But also, hopefully, you can tell from my notes that you're kind of a pain.
Yeah. Well, then that leads me to my other favorite.
I'm really sorry, but I kind of stand by what I said in the meeting. You're kind of a pain to deal with. Yeah.
And honestly, because the outcome of that specific example was we did see each other more eye to eye. He realized, it ended up yielding good fruit. I have a friend that I'm meeting for lunch later today. And, one of my other favorite verses is faithful are the wounds of a friend. It's easy to, if someone goes at you and just tells you all your negative qualities without giving you any uplifting ways, like that's just a mean person. Like that doesn't help anybody. But if like your friend approaches you and says, hey, Andrew, these are some things that, because it takes a lot for a friend, especially guys, to go into another guy and say, hey, these are some things I've noticed that would probably help you. Like if you're really honest, you're like, very few people are willing to do that because it takes way more effort to invest your time and your efforts into somebody than it is to either say nothing or just passively aggressively just shame them, if you will. And so like that doesn't do anybody any good. So
Amen. All right, what's one thing we haven't talked about today that gets you fired up?
Boundaries create freedom. That's my number one. So I have a whole speech that I give about it. But this is a story I wanted to share that's I think would resonate well with your audience, and it certainly does with me. But my wife I'm an extreme extrovert. She's an extreme introvert. It's not without its challenges for sure. However, I'm a better person because of it. And I like to talk a lot about boundaries because I think we, as business owners, we think we have to work all the time. We have to be, if we're always working, if we're always giving all of our efforts to our clients under the guise of we're doing it for our family, like, are we really though? Like, are we doing it for ourselves? Is it selfish? Is it our own ego? Like, be honest. And so I have to give my wife a lot of thanks for like every day I'm home at 5:00. I pick up the kids from school at 5. We have dinner at 5:30, and I don't work from 5:00 at night till the next morning. And I wake up early to work out. I take the kids to school and then I work. And like, the reason I share that is not like, yay, Mark, you're great. It's to let other business owners know that yes, you can do that. And I'm not saying that there's not times where you have to work at night or work on a weekend to get something in bid, but the problem is it's a slippery slope. And Rick Kendall is they're in town here. They're the reigning national builder of the year in the United States. They do probably $30 to $50 million a year in revenue. They're a very high-end builder. And Rick told me I have 3 kids, 9, 7, and 5, and his kids were 9 and 11 during the story. And he shared a story. I had coffee with him. It was like 5, 6 years ago. And I said, tell me a story that has informed and made you sort of the builder that you are today. And he said, there was a hedge fund manager from New York that was building, call it a $10 million home. And he said he wanted to, and there was some competition on the project. And he said, we want to meet every Saturday at 3:00. And Rick said, yes. So for 3 years, every single Saturday at 3:00, he met this guy, and his kids were 9 and 7 or 9 and 11 at the time. It doesn't matter. And his point was, after it was all done, he said, that was one of the worst decisions I ever made. I gave up 3 years of my kids' life on Saturdays because you can't, if that's 3:00, it's like, you really can't do it that much in the beginning. You can't do much. It just kind of takes your whole day. And so hearing that story 2 months later, this was coming right out of COVID. There was a John and Leah were their names, and I build mostly traditional homes, and I always wanted to build a real contemporary and modern one just to show architects that I could do that kind of work. And this client wanted a super modern home, and they never had children, and they own their businesses. They were probably in their late 60s, early 70s, and they said, we want to meet on nights and weekends only. And I had just heard this story from Rick. And so I give him so much credit because I'm not sure I would have had the wherewithal, or I wouldn't have created that boundary. And so I told John and Leah, I said, I'm sorry. I have 2 kids. And at the time, I think I had like a 6-month-old. And I said, but my family is very important. I don't do nights and I don't do weekends. And I said, I'm sorry. I might not be the right builder for you, but this home means a lot to me, and I will do an amazing job. And keep in mind that my team, it's like my cabinet guy isn't building on nights and weekends. Like my cabinet guy is working between normal working hours. And I said, but I will pair you with an architect or designer that can help, so because I understand like doctors, other people have other schedules. It's just my paradigm. Anyway, he said, I'm not sure we can work with you. And I said, I understand. And he called me 4 days later and he said, we're going to go ahead with you. And it's because you set such clear boundaries. We really respect what you did. And so I like to share that story a lot. Again, not kudos to me, kudos to Rick for sharing that story that helped me set a boundary in my life that I'm better for it. John and Lee are better for it. Everyone benefited from that. Anyway, that's a story that I get really excited about. So when
that's a great word. I talk to a lot of contractors that are fly by the seat of their pants, right? And you want to do a good job for the client and you want to be available and show your Johnny on the spot. But ultimately, I think you're right. Like and family is universal, man. Like when you take off time for your kid's soccer game, people get that. I'm on vacation. I'm not checking my email right now. Like people get that. And so it shows that you have a backbone. It shows that you care. It shows what matters. So I love that, man. Anything else before we hop off?
Just this thing of vulnerability. We had something, I'm part of the Contractor Coalition Summit with 5 other builders. We put it on twice a year, every 6 months. You get builders from all over the country that get together. We were just in Chicago. Our next one is in Denver, actually, in May. You should come. I'll send you an invite.
I'll be there.
All right. Anyway, usually opening night, we'll have like a sponsor or we'll have a guest speaker share something. And our guest speaker, who we normally get, Mark LaLiberte, he's in Arizona, but he has construction to instruction in Colorado. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway, flies 300 days a year, gives speeches all over the world about energy performance and yada, yada. Amazing speaker. Anyway, his flight was canceled. So we had to pivot. And I said, why don't we do an open mic? And let's just, because it always gets super vulnerable, at the dinners, because it's a 4-day event. So a lot of the learning is like builders talking shop in between dinners and all that kind of stuff. And I said, let's do open mic and I'll go, we'll have some of the leaders go first of just sharing their biggest losses. And so I shared, in hindsight, it was a pretty pathetic story. I shared the one about the AI one, like not that big of a deal, just, trying to put some pie in your face so people felt vulnerable. But within about 3 people were talking about suicide. People were talking about mental depression. People were talking about drug addictions and all kinds of stuff. And it was amazing. So there's people crying. There's people I'd never met. These are all strangers. Most of these people had never met each other, but it got super real, super vulnerable. And a few people stood up. One guy at the end basically just said, hey, he goes, I feel like I have to share my testimony. And he said, I have to say that like a lot of what's happening here right now is like what happens in our Bible study or in our church group. And in terms of like, this is how I found God was going through a similar process. And so he goes, I just want to thank all of you wherever you are in your journey in life, thank you for sharing this story and the reason I have to give credit to God is because the place I'm at today is because I found him during the struggle. So you might be at this really difficult, dark place in your life, but know that maybe that is the struggle that leads you to a place where your faith is deeper, your joy is greater, and your relationship with God is more sound. And so sometimes we get so focused in the valley that we forget where the mountaintop is and look up. And the reason I bring it up is like that whole weekend, I've done this for 8 years now. It was my favorite weekend in 8 years for this Contractor Coalition Summit because people were so vulnerable from day one. And so it was a really cool thing to be a part of and to see people just be so just open, like you said, authentic and real with each other. It really set the tone in a very special way.
I love that. Mark, if people want to learn more about who you are and what you do, where can they go?
You can just go Instagram or our website, Mark Williams Custom Homes, or The Curious Builder. Both of all roads lead to Rome in that case.
I love that. Well, hey, don't go anywhere. I want to keep talking, but thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andrew.